You can actually own a piece of Dave & Buster's for less than the cost of a large popcorn at the movies. Not a joke, not a gimmick. The company trades publicly on the stock market, and a single share has at various points cost less than $20. But here's the twist almost nobody realizes. You cannot open your own Dave & Buster's location in the United States. Not for $1 million, not for $10 million. There's no franchise application anywhere. Most people assume a chain this size, with over 150 locations packed with arcade games, bowling lanes, and a full bar, must work like every other national brand. Pay a fee, sign an agreement, open your own store. It doesn't. Every single Dave & Buster's location in America is owned and operated directly by the company itself, which is why the actual question worth asking isn't how much does a Dave & Buster's franchise cost? It's what does it actually cost to run one of these buildings? And what's the real way an everyday person can own a piece of this business? By the end of this video, you'll know both answers, including the exact profit margin on the single most overlooked part of this business, the games themselves. This is Owned Economics, and we're breaking down what it actually costs to own a Dave & Buster's. The reality check. From the outside, a Dave & Buster's looks like pure spectacle. Wall-to-wall arcade games, a sports bar with dozens of TVs, private event rooms booked for birthday parties and corporate outings, and a dining menu that feels almost secondary to the noise and lights around it. People walk in, spend $60 on a game card in about 10 minutes, and walk out assuming the whole building must print money. Here's what people don't see. This is actually 3 separate businesses running under one roof at the same time. It's a full-service restaurant with all the food cost, kitchen labor, and health code compliance that comes with any sit-down concept. It's a bar with liquor licensing and liability exposure, and it's an arcade and entertainment operation with hundreds of thousands of dollars in game hardware that has to stay maintained, updated, and profitable on its own. Run all 3 well, and you've got one of the highest revenue per square foot concepts in the entire restaurant industry. Let any one of the 3 slip, and the other 2 end up covering for it. There's also a piece almost nobody accounts for going in. The games themselves aren't just entertainment, they're the highest margin product in the entire building, and the company has built its financial model almost entirely around that fact. What that actually means for the numbers is exactly where this gets interesting. But here's what the numbers actually look like.
Chapter 1. What it actually costs to build a venue like this. Since there's no franchise fee to report here, the real number worth understanding is what it costs to build and open an independent, large-format entertainment venue in this style. The same category of investment the company itself makes every time it opens a new location, based on industry estimates for comparable entertainment concepts. Real estate and build-out. A Dave & Buster's style venue typically runs 25,000 to 40,000 square feet, dramatically larger than a standard restaurant or bar. Leasing or building space at that scale in a decent retail or entertainment district can run into the millions just for the shell. And full interior build-out, flooring, electrical capacity for hundreds of arcade machines, kitchen infrastructure, bar installation, and a bowling section in some locations commonly lands between $3 million and $8 million, depending on the market and how much of the space needs to be built from scratch. Games and entertainment hardware. This is the cost category unique to this business, and it's a big one. A full arcade floor with 150 to 200 modern games, VR experiences, and prize redemption systems can run $2 to $4 million just in equipment, and that number needs refreshing every few years as games age out and new titles are added to keep the floor feeling current. Kitchen and bar equipment. A full commercial kitchen capable of serving a high-volume menu, plus a complete bar setup for a full-service liquor program, typically adds another $500,000 to $1 million on top of the game hardware.
Licensing. Full liquor licensing for a large-format venue, combined with amusement device permits required in most states for operating coin or card-based arcade machines, can run anywhere from $20,000 in a straightforward market to well over $200,000 in a heavily regulated one. A smaller line item relative to the total build, but one that catches first-time entertainment operators off guard. Initial inventory and working capital. First liquor and food orders, prize redemption merchandise, uniforms, and point-of-sale systems across a building this size typically add another $300,000 to $500,000, plus a real cash reserve, since a venue this large doesn't fill up overnight. Add it all up, and a comparable independent large-format entertainment venue realistically costs $6 million to $14 million to open, a number that explains immediately why this format stays almost entirely in the hands of large public companies rather than individual operators. That's not a range meant to discourage anyone. It's simply the honest scale of this specific business model.
Chapter 2. How a business like this actually makes money. Here's the part that surprises people. Food and drinks aren't the biggest profit driver here. The games are. Amusements and games revenue. Industry estimates put game card and amusement revenue at roughly 50 to 55% of total sales in a large format entertainment venue like this. And the margins on that revenue are extraordinary. Once a machine is paid off, the cost of a customer swiping a game card and playing around is close to nothing, making this the single most profitable line item in the entire building. Food and beverage sales. Typically the second largest share, often 35 to 40% of revenue, with alcohol carrying meaningfully better margins than food, similar to how a standard sports bar operates, just at a much larger scale and volume. Events and private party revenue. Corporate outings, birthday parties, and group bookings that reserve private rooms or game card bundles bring in flat or semi-flat fees that can range from a few $100s for a small party to tens of thousands for a large corporate buyout. And these bookings are disproportionately valuable because they fill weekday hours that would otherwise sit quiet. That's before you even factor in the psychology built into the pricing. Game cards are sold in tiered bundles designed to nudge customers towards spending slightly more than they planned. And because the marginal cost of one more gameplay is nearly zero, every extra dollar spent on the card flows almost straight to profit. Would you still call this an arcade with a restaurant attached after hearing that? It's closer to the reverse, a highly profitable entertainment operation that happens to also serve food, because keeping people in the building longer means more game cards get swiped.
Chapter 3. Operating costs. This is where a venue this size either turns into one of the most profitable formats in the industry or quietly bleeds cash from every direction. Labor. With a kitchen, a full bar, an arcade floor, and event staff all running simultaneously, labor is typically the largest cost, often 28% to 33% of revenue. A single large format location can carry a monthly payroll well into six figures once every department is staffed for a busy weekend. Cost of goods. Food and liquor costs together generally run similar to a standard restaurant and bar, typically 25% to 30% of food and beverage revenue combined, though this business benefits from the games revenue diluting the overall cost percentage across total sales. Game maintenance and technology. This is the cost most people never think about. Arcade machines break down, software needs updating, and prize redemption systems require constant restocking. Industry estimates put ongoing game maintenance, parts, and periodic hardware refreshes at $200,000 to $500,000 a year for a large venue, a real recurring cost of keeping the highest margin part of the business actually working. Utilities. A building this size, running arcade lighting, sound systems, a full kitchen, and climate control across tens of thousands of square feet, typically runs utility costs of $30,000 to $60,000 a month, considerably higher than a standard restaurant given the sheer footprint involved. Insurance and licensing renewals. Liability insurance for a venue combining alcohol service, amusement devices, and a large public gathering space typically runs into six figures annually, reflecting the layered risk profile of everything happening under one roof at once. That's a lot of moving parts. Here's the honest reason it still works at scale. The games subsidize everything else.
A venue that keeps its arcade floor fresh and its game cards moving can absorb these operating costs in a way a pure restaurant concept simply can't. Chapter 4. Profit margins and real numbers. Large format entertainment and dining concepts like this typically target unit-level operating margins in the mid-teens to low 20% range, a meaningfully stronger margin profile than a standalone restaurant or bar, precisely because the games revenue carries such high profitability once the hardware is paid off. Let's put real numbers on it. Say a single location in this format generates $12 million in annual revenue, a realistic figure for an established venue in a strong market, a genuinely large number for a single retail unit, and one that highlights exactly why this business operates at a completely different scale than a neighborhood restaurant. Cost of goods, food, beverage, and games combined, roughly $3.4 million. Labor, roughly $3.6 million. Utilities, maintenance, and game upkeep, roughly $1.4 million. Insurance, licensing, marketing, and miscellaneous, roughly $900,000. That leaves around $2.7 million before debt service and taxes, an operating margin near 22%. After financing costs tied to that multi-million-dollar build-out and equipment package, along with taxes, a realistic net margin for a single unit lands closer to 10% to 14%, or roughly $1.2 million to $1.7 million a year in bottom-line profit for one location. To put that in perspective, that single location can generate more annual profit than most small businesses generate in total revenue, which is exactly the scale advantage this format has over a standalone restaurant or bar, and exactly why individual operators can't realistically compete by opening their own version from scratch. And remember that stock price we mentioned at the start? This is the connection. When locations like this perform well across the whole company, that performance shows up directly in the stock price of the publicly traded parent company, which is the actual mechanism by which an everyday person participates in this business's success.
Chapter 5. What ownership actually looks like here, and what separates success from failure. Since there's no franchise to buy into, both the real path to ownership and the real risks here look different than they would for a typical chain business. The real path to ownership. Because the company trades publicly on the stock market under the ticker PLAY, literally anyone can buy shares through a standard brokerage account, becoming a partial owner of every single location the company operates, without ever having to run a store, manage staff, or fix a broken arcade machine themselves. Equipment obsolescence. Games age out of relevance fast, and a venue that lets its arcade floor go stale loses its biggest revenue driver. The locations that stay strong treat game rotation as a real annual budget line, not an occasional upgrade, keeping the floor feeling current enough to pull repeat visits. Real estate risk. Because these venues need enormous footprints in high-visibility retail corridors, lease costs and site selection carry outsized weight compared to a typical restaurant. The operators who study foot traffic, nearby anchor tenants, and regional demographics before committing to a location protect themselves from years of underperformance in a building that's expensive either way. Economic sensitivity. Entertainment spending is discretionary, meaning a venue like this can see real swings during broader economic downturns when households cut back on non-essential outings first. The strongest operators diversify revenue across events, corporate bookings, and weekday specials, which smooths out the swings that pure walk-in traffic alone can't cover on its own. Competition from newer formats. Smaller, more localized entertainment concepts have grown quickly in recent years, competing for the same discretionary spending. The venues that hold their ground tend to lean into what a large format space can do that a smaller competitor can't. Big group events, sports viewing at scale, and enough variety that a repeat visit still feels fresh. What separates the operations that thrive from the ones that struggle usually comes down to three things: treating the games as the core profit engine and reinvesting in them accordingly, controlling labor across three departments running at once instead of letting any one of them run bloated,
and building event and corporate revenue that fills the calendar during the hours pure walk-in traffic can't cover on its own. Everything in this video is general business education, based on industry averages and publicly available estimates, not confirmed internal financial data from Dave & Buster's Entertainment, Inc. It's not direct financial, legal, or investment advice, and nothing here should be taken as a recommendation to buy or sell any stock. Anyone considering an investment in publicly traded shares or building an independent entertainment venue should work with a licensed financial advisor, accountant, and commercial real estate professional before committing any capital. So here's the real question. Knowing that the only real way in is either years of corporate operating experience or simply buying a share of stock, would you rather own a piece of the whole company from your phone or take on the multi-million-dollar bet of building something like this yourself? Drop your answer in the comments and tell me why. If you want the next breakdown, maybe a business that looks impossible to own until you find out the actual way in, subscribe to Owned Economics 2, and I'll see you in the next one.